don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Well, I try not to think about it. So when I'm doing a trauma index, for example, with my clients, I say, what do you avoid thinking about the most? Not necessarily what was the hardest, but what do you avoid with every fiber of your being? What do you avoid? I mean, you avoid it like it's the plague. Like if you think about it, it's gonna kill you. And so avoidance is a huge indication of PTSD. Very huge. So again, that can be external or internal. I had a client who had a trauma, and basically she couldn't even get in her car because the car was a reminder of the trauma. So every time she attempted to get in it, it was like reliving that violation all over again. I've had many clients who had, and that's just an example of the avoidance piece. That's very huge. There's also irritable outbursts.
Yes.
You know, unexplained outbursts, being angry.
Yeah.
Some people say I'm on edge all the time. I always have my guard up. Nobody can be trusted. Nobody's ever gonna love me. I'm damaged goods. Nobody's gonna want me. All these are ways to cope, or an attempt to cope with the trauma. The natural emotions, the anger at the perpetrator, for example, that's a natural emotion. I always use a fireplace analogy when I talk with my clients about how emotions work and what happens when we don't have a release for them, or we don't have a coping strategy and a way to manage them appropriately. And that even ties back into PTSD. Some people shut down. They stay in a freeze.
Yeah.
Some people automatically go into a fight. They become defensive. You know, they can't take much criticism. Every single thing is just, they're so tender. And I'm not saying this to stigmatize anyone, but to normalize. And I'm trying to think, because I normally use a PCL-5. I've used it so many times to assess for PTSD and to keep up and see, is it increasing or decreasing? And if I'm seeing a constant increase and I'm not seeing a decrease, then I say, okay, there may be another stuck point we haven't explored yet. Now, if it increase when we first start, it's normal for it to be increasing because they're not engaging in avoidance anymore. So the nightmares, the flashbacks will be a little bit more frequent. But I give them homework in between. And part of that is very cognitive. So my approach is very cognitive. And so those are just a few examples of trauma responses that are indicators of PTSD once it passes that month mark. Which, again, a lot of people cope with PTSD by self-medicating. Because they don't understand what they're feeling.
It's very not safe, you know. Not safe. Right, thank you for that. You know, you have a lot to share, so rich things to talk about, things that can enrich the mind, and you've got them. Now, please, can you explain the links between anxiety and trauma?
One of the main connections is that hypervigilance piece. And hypervigilance is when you are you're overly cautious. Like a person, if they're checking the locks, they checked it 30 times in the last 2 hours. It could also be some people, like I say, I don't feel safe around large crowds. You know, you may have a person who was in a crowd and they got shot. So every single time they get around crowds, that alarm, they get this false alarm that says you're not safe. Somebody's gonna shoot you. Because there has been a pairing that has occurred. In trauma, there's a pairing that occurs between anything connected to the trauma and the amygdala. Because it's not logical. you can't trust it, you gotta correct it.
Yeah.
That's where challenging the thoughts comes in, which is the approach I use. Because when you shift the thought, the emotion is going to shift.
Yes.
And the behavior will shift. But you can't just start with behavior. Because if you don't address the root of it, you're going to engage in a maladaptive behavior. It's just going to be a different one.
Yeah.
But it all goes back to you didn't say, okay, what is at the root of this stuff point? Where did this thing start? Did this start because I was abused at the age of 3 and I was told, don't tell anybody. What goes on in his family stays in his family, which that has been a mantra in the African American community for so long that makes me scream. Because I go, no. If it's hurting me, I'm going to talk. You know, and which may be a little bit of a scapegoat in my family, because I was a talkative woman. I ain't telling all my business. I say, no, I'm going to talk. I know you're going to be a little mad with me, but again, I won't crumble because you get mad at me. My feelings may be a little hurt, but
many are bound over not to tell, and that's the root cause of even people running away. A lot of things happening to kids, you know, and it's not affecting them.
Well, you got adults walking around. They've aged, but their emotional growth is so stunning. So they're adults, but on the inside they're broken.
Yeah,
broken little boy or broken little girl. And when that part of them gets triggered, that functioning adult goes and takes a seat. And that child says, nobody's going to tell me what to do. You have some people who can't have trouble with authority figures. They can't take orders. Ain't nobody going to tell me what to do. And then I say to myself, well, what comes up for you when your boss tells you you need to do X, Y, and Z? Ain't nobody going to tell me what to do again. And I'm like, again, okay, you speak as if something happened before. So I'm curious. Oh, it was nothing. I was just 3 and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, So I'll say to them, how old do you feel emotionally? And I've had my clients go, I say, just follow me with this. And they'll go, well, I feel 7. What happened when you were 7? Well, blah, 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 blah. I go, oh, so that was the 7-year-old that showed up in that conversation. That definitely wasn't the adult. She was sitting down. That was a 7-year-old that showed up in that conversation with your mama, and you still angry at her 20 years later.
It's so sad.
And it's very unfortunate, but that and also that connection has to do with there's a loss of a sense of safety. And so there's a loss. And you know, we are wired. We have certain Maslow, Abraham Maslow talked about the hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
And he said one need we have, it's a fundamental need. We have to be able to feel safe. When God created that garden, and he put Adam in it, Adam, there was an element of safety in that garden. It wasn't until after the serpent, and all of a sudden you see all this tension showing up in their marriage. And you know, of course you see the blaming and finger pointing. It's this woman, it's all her fault. You know, she's like, well, the snake made me do it. No accountability, that's a whole nother session. But the point being, that garden was a safe place. God did not create us to live in this constant state of hypervigilance, which is why this takes such a toll on our physical and our mental health. Our bodies are not wired to carry all that. They're not created. God can carry all that, but we're not wired to carry all of that. So our body's going to react and say, I wasn't created to carry this. What are you doing? That's why our bodies react how they do. They're talking to us.
You know, our shoulders can cope with the worries and overwhelming.
So exposure. What I do is I'll expose them to the trigger so that the amygdala can learn. When we avoid, we rob that part of our brain of the ability to learn. And so pairing can't be made and a new association can't be made. So it actually keeps the hypervigilance going. It keeps it in place. It's like the avoidance supports it. So you're getting the opposite of the result you really want.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Right. Let's go on to the, how does trauma impact on people's ability to function daily?
Oh wow. Well, for one thing, a huge thing is it affects our ability to trust.
Ability to trust. Yeah.
It and I mean that's a huge, to not be able to trust. And this is the thing, we were created. We're relational beings, whether we want to admit it or not. We're created to be in community. But when we go through trauma and we're violated, it's this sense of I gotta keep myself safe. I gotta isolate. You know, and then I've worked with a lot of clients on the stuck points around trust. It runs so deep. And a lot of times when they're struggling with trust in relationships, I say, well, we may need to go back a little bit. Tell me about childhood. And then I'm able to say, oh, that's how that seed got planted. That got watered a long time ago. And all these other traumas, they just serve to reinforce in your mind that nobody can be trusted. Then I say, nobody? You know, there's a billion people on this earth, so out of a billion people, nobody can be trusted. Nobody. Nobody. You said you took a bus here. So that means at some level you had to trust the bus driver, or God was not driving the bus. The bus driver was driving the bus. So you still had to have an element of trust in that bus driver to get on that bus. Because I said, well, God, but he wasn't driving the bus, boo-boo. That was a human driving the bus. So at some level, you had to trust that bus driver. I'm sitting in this chair, so obviously I have to trust the person who made it, that I'm not going to fall on the floor when I sit in it. Do I know that? No. So when I sit down, I have to trust that it's going to be able to support me. So that's why I really come in challenging and saying, well, let's talk about evidence. And evidence is not just your feelings. They can change. Feelings can lie. Remember, your amygdala is not logical. It knows nothing about logic. You have to correct it. You know, our prefrontal cortex, that knows about, that's where our judgment and our logic is. That's why when people go through trauma, they say, I don't remember anything. And I go, can I tell you something? There's a reason why you don't remember anything. Because the part of your brain that performed that function, it wasn't working. So you were not going to remember anything. And they go, oh, you mean I'm not crazy? I say, no, believe me. I've met some people, before I had people sit in my chair, you're not crazy. You just been through trauma. There's a major difference. So that's definitely the relationship of the anxiety to the hypervigilance. That there's a fear of this is going to happen again.
Yeah.
My safety is going to be violated again if I go back into this crowd. And that fear, I validate it. I say, hey, I get it. It's real. But we want to try to form a new connection. So we got to teach that amygdala. We got to allow it to have a new experience with that trigger.
That's good. Right. What effective coping strategies can you offer victims of trauma?
One effective coping strategy I definitely recommend is support of your, like if you have a community of faith, you have a support system, reaching out to your support system, utilizing therapy, utilizing medication if you have to. I don't have an issue with that. To me, that doesn't cancel our faith. Because we're still human beings.
That's right.
We still got to deal
That's
with
right.
this body.
And God made the doctors.
Yeah, he created
Gave them wisdom.
psychiatrists.
Yeah.
He
Gave them
created
wisdom.
doctors.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he created them. You know, when we have a toothache, where do we go? Do we say, ooh, well, Jesus gonna heal it, and we just sit there? Or we say, ooh, I need to go to the dentist?
Yes.
Because let me tell you, I'm a big baby. I don't like pain. I'll be the first to admit it. When I say I'm the biggest baby, I will holler on the floor about a toothache. Oh no, I said I gotta go see the dentist because I'm like, Jesus, I love you. I believe your word. I believe you gonna work through that dentist. Let me grab my keys. But I don't sit there and go, oh my gosh. Or I go to the eye doctor. I go to the optometrist because God put them here for a reason. But when it comes to our mental health, we somehow go, oh my goodness, if I go see a therapist, I don't have any faith. And I'm like, so that means when you went to the dentist, you didn't have any faith either? Or when you went for your annual checkup to the doctor? Well, that's different. How? So I challenge you the next time your tooth hurts, I don't care how intense it gets, just sit there on the couch and don't go anywhere and tell me what happens. And I guarantee you they go, oh. I think we have attached such a stigma to therapy, especially within the African American community. You see a therapist, that's a white thing. You know, that's for crazy people. And I go, no, you'll be crazy if you don't go see one.
That's true.
Now, if you want to stay crazy, yeah, you'll be crazy if you don't go see one, because you're not that far from it right now. And I know I have some crazy. We all do. I have my own therapist, the psychiatrist. I'm honest. Oh yes, honey. I see my therapist today. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus, for my therapist.
That's right.
She helped me.
God has put them there for a purpose, you know. They're His hand and foot on earth, you know. And one good thing is, when you go to, if you say, for instance, a patient is on medication and does not go about, you know, living a good lifestyle, like you mentioned support system, reaching out to their support system, you know, doing exercise, using coping skills, all the tools and techniques, you know, strategies. If they don't do that, avoid doing all that, you know, and, you know, depend on their medication, they could be, you know, so what that is, the all those other lifestyle comes to enhance the effectiveness of the medication, you know, because you and I may be having Tylenol, or maybe having headache, and you are always going out there, utilizing your social outlets, you know, interacting with your support system, doing all the coping, using all the coping skills, doing your self-care, enhancing all your wellness, you know, you're doing that. So you're, in fact, the medication you're taking, you know, is being enhanced by your various lifestyle, you know, the way you enhance yourself. So I do recommend people, in addition to their medication, you know, that's why when someone goes to a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist say go to the therapist, because the therapist will help you find the tools and the techniques and to change lifestyle, you know, that enhances, you know, otherwise the medication might not even be effective. Because the mindset is not. Yeah, because the mindset hasn't shifted. So it's you know, it's not just, ooh, let me take this pill. Poof. No, you have to. It is to be an adjunct. To to the medication, and they all have to work together. But you can't just say, you know, oh, let me take this pill. No. If you don't deal with the core stuff and get that cleared up, no pill is going to help. Yeah, so that's good. So, as a specialist in trauma, grief, loss, and everything you have learned, you know, in this mental health profession, And also, as someone who has worked in the hospice and with their relatives, family members, what message of hope would you like to share with those victims? Because there, as we speak, there are
Oh yes.
people out there suffering
Mhm.
in hospice, tending to their loved ones, watching them,
Mhm.
daily,
Yeah, watching your loved one, and that's that anticipatory grief. I had a client once who was going through that with her mother, and there was a lot of anger, and the anger was warranted because initially they didn't even realize that the stage that the mother was in was that bad, and they found out, I guess, like kind of near the end, and I told her, and your anger is warranted, and it's okay to be angry with
It's
her.
okay, yeah.
Because
it's
it that took away choices, and nobody has the right to take away another person's choice. I get to choose how I react to that, but you don't have the right to take that choice from me. I may scream and holler and lay out on the floor, but that's my choice if that's how I want to deal with it. And so a lot of that anticipatory grief was psychoeducational, because many times they start grieving before that person has died. And I've heard a lot of them say, you know what, I'm glad that they're no longer here. It's not because they didn't love them, it's because they got tired of seeing them suffer. And I say that as somebody who had to watch my grandmother shut down and become nonverbal, and look at her on the table with not really being able to talk, and say to myself, this can't be the woman who raised me. I don't know that person on the table. I know Anna Mae Barnes because that's partially did a good bit of rearing me. But that was a hard place to have to see someone who was so strong and so independent and so feisty laying on the table and being reduced to a nonverbal state. That was very heartbreaking and challenging for me. So I can empathize with those who are going through seeing their loved ones slowly deteriorate, and the powerlessness and the helplessness you sometimes feel. Even the anger with God. Again, because for her healing took place on the other side. But the message I would want to tell them is, one thing, you're not your trauma. That recovery is not just possible. It can be a reality, and that it's not about it going back to what it was, but embracing the newness of what can be, of what God can do, and what He can bring out of it. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. My main message is, you're not what you've been through, or you're not what you're going through. You're not your grief. I can't tell you when it's gonna pass. I'm not God, I'm not a genie. But if you work the process and use the tools, you will see light at the end of the tunnel. I can't tell you when. I'm not God. Everybody's grief journey is different.
Yeah.
But I always say, you work the process, you'll see the progress. I just can't tell you when. Now that, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you you're gonna see it in 6 months.
That's a good answer to the question. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing, coming over to. I would like more of you, and especially the addiction and trauma. And, you've done very well. Thank you so much. And for those listening to this very episode, I would say we'll continue with the issue of anxiety and depression. As we all know, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
It is a broad topic. It can't exhaust it. So we'll continue to be talking about it and finding solution, to alleviate pain, relieve ourselves, and be able to function.
Yeah.
Be able to function at the right level. So as time goes on, I will be expecting people to come on this podcast, like as a group, and share,
Yes.
just as we are sharing today. So that's it for today. And if you've enjoyed listening to us, I would ask you to, continue listening to us in future episodes. And you can go on the website Rewired Mind Rewired Mind Counseling. And what's your website?
Thecalmcorner.org.
Okay. All right. You will give your details. You will put your details out for them to,
Yes.
to contact you if anybody
Yes.
is interested, because you are a trauma specialist.
Yes.
That's your area of specialization, and grief, and you've had so much experience. You have a wealth of experience in these areas, and I think people would love to hear from you, and you will have a word for them as well. All right, you're doing a good job. I appreciate it. Even right from when we were doing our, what's it called?
Not
The
practice,
licensure,
licensure, yeah.
I admire the way you come across. You have so much knowledge, experience, and all that. And what I admire mostly about you is the fact that you are a widow, and you've pulled through. It does not set you back being a widow. In fact, challenges you to reach out and be a useful resource to other widows, those going through the same thing.
Yeah.
So you've done very well, and you're continuing to do well. So you have something to give out to the world. So
Oh yes.
keep going, keep it up.
Oh, I will, and I'm in the process of getting my certified clinical anxiety treatment professional certification.
Oh, that's good.
So I'm doing my training with that. I just renewed my certified clinical services provider for ADHD. So I work with that population a lot.
A lot, yes.
And when they're grieving, that's very interesting because it's an executive function disorder, meaning struggling with concentration. So if you already struggle with you already struggle with concentration, and then you're going through grief and you have ADHD. It's like being in a whirlwind, and people on the outside don't understand because they don't understand how the disorder works. I have ADHD. I have to manage mine, and I take medication for it. And I didn't discover it till later in life, which makes it very interesting when you're 44 and you discover. So that's what it was all these years.
Yeah, recently I saw someone who, just discovered, I think he's 50 something, just recently discovered, and he's working on it.
Yeah, so with my ADHD clients, I'd be like, it's okay, take a deep breath, calm down. You're not slow, there's nothing wrong with you. You have an executive function disorder, and there's some strategies we could do. So just take a deep breath, because people misinterpret it that don't have it. And if you don't have it and you don't understand, because the neural activity in the ADHD brain completely different. If you put them on imaging screens, they will look certain areas are gonna light up. The neural connectivity is very different.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming over. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, God bless you. Have a bless everyone.
Yes.
We'll continue our series.
Yes, and I look forward to that addiction and trauma.
Yeah, addiction and trauma.
Because there's a science to addiction, just